we're going to talk about transparency versus opacity, but really how to create a color that is very very smooth and transparent, that doesn't show brush strokes in it. So there are a couple of things to know about. So the first thing is that your labels, at least, well, golden, will show you how transparent a color is. And generally speaking, um, these synthetic colors, and these days actually most of the paints are made from synthetic pigments, but they are transparent naturally. And golden doesn't add white to these colors unless it's actually on the label. But one way for sure that you can tell if it's transparent is you see these little black hatches, and you can see the paint, and this is hand painted right across the label here. So you can see that it's very transparent. And this is a high flow. In other words, it's the thinnest viscosity and the one that you want to shake up. And I'm using this because somebody asked about using acrylic inks. So this is Golden's answer to acrylic ink. In other words, it's a very thin viscosity acrylic paint. So the word ink is really, acrylic isn't ink, acrylic is paint, but it's a way for for the consumer to know, what kind of viscosity you're getting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just pour a little bit of this out. I was looking for. I love using these lids, these clear lids, because it sort of gives you a place that you can pour out your paint, and it's not so deep like a cup that especially if you don't need a lot, you can actually see what you're doing. And you could also, of course, use palette paper, but this is a really convenient way of doing it. So, of course, the most obvious way that you can wet your paints down is to add water, and certainly you can get a pretty transparent. This is, by the way, reused BFK paper rather. You're going to be able to get a nice, even paint like this with water. And of course, again, this is very absorbent paper. Right, I have here is a poured area of water with probably, this looks to me like quinacridone gold. I'm not sure, but at any rate, that's another really transparent one. And of course, but with a lot of water, you can't control your paint as well. And the same thing is true with here, but it's a very even look, especially with that wonderful 100% rag paper. So then the other thing that you can do, of course, is to extend your paint and to make a glaze with some sort of a fluid medium. And this is a gloss fluid medium. You may or may not want gloss. This I've had for a while. Let's just see how fluid it actually is. It should be pretty good. Yeah, well, you saw that. It's okay. Yeah, it's getting a little thicker, but it certainly will extend your paint. And you can, of course, add your transparent pigment to this. Make more paint. And the paint's going to look different when you use it. It's going to stay more in place. It's not going to, I'm going to say that it will affect the absorbency a bit because it is the plastic that's in it. But let's just see what that's like. So yeah, that's a pretty good, even, transparent. Yeah, right. And you can see that it doesn't absorb as easily into the paper. It definitely has more concrete edges here. So another thing that you can add to your paint is something called acrylic glazing liquid, which is very much like this polymer medium gloss that I just used. Let's just see if this is maybe a little bit thinner, but it's just a matter of what you want. You can easily, these are comparable. There's as I said earlier in the class, there are a lot of things that do similar things certain things do things that others won't do. So the polymer medium gloss, does something different. This was made, definitely to create glazes, but they both create glazes beautifully. So let's pour a little bit of this out. This is a little bit thicker. Okay, interesting. And we'll again add our paint to the glazing liquid. And of course, the more medium you have, the fainter the application of your color, right? The more transparent it's going to get. That's still pretty good. Like I say, there's a lot of pigment in these paints, and so they're going to really, it's going to take a lot to really get them as, more and more transparent. Let's see if we can do this. Let me add a little bit more of the medium over here. Or rather, this is the acrylic glazing liquid. Same stuff, just kind of a different name. And I'm going to now take a little bit of my pigment. See, I don't need much at all. And I'm going to mix it up in here. And let's see if I can get a very faint glaze. And, it does extend the drying time a bit because, you're adding more stuff to this very thin paint. So, although that's pretty dry now. Yeah. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's see if we've made even more transparent color. Yeah, that's really good, and it's lighter, but it's still amazing how much pigment there is. I really thought that I was getting it pretty thinned out, and we can keep going. So that's the story with the glazing, or thinning, getting a really even look of paint without brush strokes. Now, should you want to make this more opaque, that you would add white to it. So I've got a watercolor ground here, or this is another one of those painting grounds that we talked about that is water absorbent, but I'm actually going to take a little bit of it. It's going to act as white for me here. I'm just going to take a little bit of using it because it's much more opaque than the titanium white. And I'm going to take a little bit out here. I'm going to be bad and take it out with my my brush, but we'll just put it over there. And that's also a trick. If you want a very opaque color that does not show brush strokes, you need to add white, and then you need to mix it well. So let's do this. Let's add a different color. This is our Hansa yellow. Again, a very transparent color. But this is the fluid viscosity. This is the fluid viscosity. So it is, and it's down to its very end. So I'm just going to take a little bit from the cap here. That's how down to the end of it is. And I'm going to put a little bit on my palette here. I'm going to mix up this white absorbent ground with my color, with my Hansa. And you can see how it changes. That is really, well, I don't know if you can see. We'll look at paper here, but when I look at this, it really, really appears much more opaque. So we'll just paint this on here, and you'll see how, really without any brush strokes this gets. And of course, this will dry a little glossy because, well, actually, no, I don't know. That's not true necessarily. No, this will be more matte because the absorbent ground is pretty matte. And as I say, it acts as a white, which is fine. You can use that. I often use gesso for a white. Titanium white is pretty opaque, but compared to gesso, it doesn't hold a candle to gesso. Gesso really is very, so that's a very, very flat color. Very, very flat by adding white to it. So what we can do here is play a little bit with the transparency. We'll just use a different color here. Why don't we use something that's going to show up against these very, very transparent areas. So this is another high flow. This is indigo. I'm going to shake it up really well. And now I'm going to squeeze it out onto another one of my palettes. This is dry. It's dirty, but it's dry, so that's okay. We'll just squeeze out a little bit. You don't need a lot because it really goes far, as you saw, before. So there's my paint. I'm going to add a little bit of the polymer medium, I guess. I'm going to put it over here, squeeze it out, and then cleaned off brush. I am going to mix that here. Actually, that's even a little bit too much paint that I added, too much pigment, because I really want a very, transparent glaze, as we were talking about before, really, really transparent glaze. So I'm going to mix this up here. Mix it really, really well. And it looks like I have a bit too much here. There we go. All right, now let's see what happens when we put this on top. And we'll try to make it very, very, very smooth. Yeah, that's pretty darn smooth. I mean, you really can see faint brush strokes, but there's nothing like, super brush stroke. You could go a little bit darker. You could also make that behave more opaquely. Let's go back to, we'll take a little bit of our white and mix that in with our color. And I'll show you the difference that we get here. But, adding white, I mean, that's the big trick, because you cannot get an opaque color otherwise, unless the paint is already opaque. But even then, that's hard. So, all right, this is paint mixed up with a little bit of white. Let's see if it's gonna cover. Yep, it's still a little bit transparent, but you could play with that and just add a little bit more white. Yep, covers that really nicely. And what I also wanted to do is to show you a truly opaque pigment. So this is one I've had for a while. It's burnt umber. It's a heavy body. It's a big one. I don't use it much, as you can see, because it's quite full still. But there we go. You'll see how naturally opaque that is. You can see right here on the top that paint is very opaque. And I'm just going to switch out a little bit right there. So it is literally a mineral. This burnt umber comes from the ground. It's an ore, and it's going to be really opaque just all by itself without needing to add white, I believe. Let's see what happens here. Yeah. So we're just going to pull that out into a nice little area. And as you can see, it is opaque, and again, not adding white to it, but it is possible to make this behave more opaquely as well. I mean, more transparently, by adding some medium. So let's do that over here one more time. Just going to take a little part of this right over there. I don't need a lot of paint, and I'm going to use my polymer medium here as a good glazing vehicle. And now I'm going to mix these two up. And again, mix it really well before you start painting with it. You really want to get it thoroughly mixed. I found that it's streakier if you don't mix it really well first. And then let's see how this is going to look. Yep, see, it really does. It does get to be transparent. really nicely like that. And then these other colors do come through. So that's it for the transparency, and I hope that made sense.